again. This is Nicole's second time being a guest speaker with My Wolf Design, and hopefully not the last. I think this is such a core fundamental skill that really any business owner needs to, put some time and effort into learning. And I think your approach is so refreshing and new and just makes it feel like very person to person and not, the used car salesman. So with that, I will hand it over to you.
Awesome. Thanks, Meredith. So thanks to everyone that's joined today. And I had the opportunity to pick a topic. Meredith is awesome. And she's like, I'll leave it in your capable hands. You tell me what you want to do. And when I thought about it, for me, it came down to developing sales habits. So when I take a look at the work that I've done with entrepreneurs, I could teach you all kinds of little tips and tricks and skill sets, but ultimately it's the habits that we form and develop that really bring a lot of success for people. So you guys can see my screen, everything, right? You can see it well. Okay, yep. Perfect. So a little bit of our agenda. So we're going to do just a quick welcome, and then we're going to talk about laying the foundation of developing really great sales habits. And then I'm going to give you some tangible sort of tactics and lots of examples throughout the presentation. And so if you have any questions at any time, just interrupt me. I'm kind of going back and forth between seeing your faces and not seeing your faces. So Meredith can be like, hey, Nicole, stop it. there's a question. So she'll alert me. So my name is Nicole, and I'm a corporate director of sales in the healthcare space here in Ontario. So I run a sales team across Ontario and absolutely love what I do. I certainly didn't go to school for sales because I don't really think that exists. But after I got into selling products and services myself, I'm definitely someone that believes in furthering my education and developing my skill set. So I do have a certified professional sales designation and a certified sales professional leadership designation. Yes, those do exist. And then I continue my education as well at the University of Yorkville. And I believe education is so empowering and powerful. And so I want to make today really about you guys and giving you some tangible, real examples and things that you can implement into your own business. So why sales habits? So like I just said, sales can be taught. It can be learned, and you can develop a great set of sales skills. But in order to develop your sales skills, first of all, you got to develop the sales habits. That really needs to be the foundation. And so there's lots of specialists on the topic of sales, and they'll tell you how to do all these sales tactics and teach you all kinds of crazy things about sales. But really, it comes down to developing those sales habits. If you don't have that, then you can't even really develop your sales skill set. And so you can apply the learnings today, which is really cool. You can apply it to other aspects of your life or other habits you want to develop and form. And oftentimes what it comes down to at the foundation level is breaking some of those beliefs that might be holding you back from getting to the next level. So let's talk about first laying the foundation. The presentation that I'm delivering today is based on the work of James Clear and his book called Atomic Habits. Has anyone had the opportunity to read this book? Ooh, Meredith's got her hand up. Okay, hey, amazing. So you guys could teach the course as well. So some of this might be repeat, some of it might be refresh, some things I may pull to the surface again for you, which is cool. So he says his most famous quote is, "You do not rise to the levels of your goals, you fall to the levels of your systems." And what he really means by this is you can set any goal you want to achieve, but if you don't have the right system, the right foundation in place to achieve that goal, you will fail. And so I want you to take a moment to think of a time where you set yourself a goal and you achieved it. And that goal can be really something small, like I started to walk every morning, which I didn't do that before, or I started eating more vegetables and I didn't really do that before. Think about the habit that you developed through setting a goal and then actually achieving it. So does everyone have one in mind? You don't have to tell me what it is. It's totally for you. Okay. So I want you to keep that with you as we go through the slides. So I don't think I really need to profess this, but I think we all know that habits are basically compound interest of self-improvement, right? So we know in order to get better, we've got to first start, and then it's a slow, gradual improvement over time. There's an amazing book and resource called The Compound Effect. Is anyone familiar with that book? Got a red cover. It's amazing. And so that book mixed with Atomic Habits is gold for any business owners or any professionals. I'm having a hard time getting back to my screen here. Sorry. I got to bring you over to the side. Okay, so you want better results, you got to take a look at your systems, right? So back to that quote, you want to rise to levels of your goals, but you potentially could fall to the levels of your systems if you don't have them in place. So the first pillar of laying the foundation is identity focus. And you're like, Nicole, I don't understand. How does this relate to developing my sales skills? Hang on, bear with me. The goal here for you guys is to make a sale or make more sales. That's what you think the goal is. But the goal is actually to become better at sales. So you can't start making the sales unless you become better at sales. So you have to actually build your identity up to align with that identity. So I'm going to give you some examples. There's tons of people out there who say, I'm horrible at math. Oh, I'm no good with technology. I'm a terrible salesperson, or I'm always late. The more we buy into that internal narrative, which if you profess it, it becomes an external narrative, those mental grooves start getting accepted as fact. So the more you profess that you're terrible at something, the more it becomes reality. And I see this all the time when I'm talking to business owners that don't love sales. Their body language goes something like this. Oh, I'm terrible at sales. And the hands go up and the body shifts backwards. And why do you think that happens? It's because they don't want to align with a salesperson, because salespeople are yucky. It's the best way I can put it. Salespeople are yucky. I don't want to identify as that. So I'm going to put my hands up. I'm going to lay my body language back. And so I'm refuting this identity of a salesperson. But I can honestly tell you that salespeople are not bad and they're not scary. And if you develop the identity of a salesperson, it doesn't make you a bad person. I want you to ask yourself, why did I start my business? Was it to just be a good person? Was it to give back to your community? Maybe those are some of the foundations, but I bet you started a business to become independent for yourself. You wanted to maybe provide additional income to your family household. I bet the goal was to provide in some capacity. So by refuting the sales identity, those are some of the things that you need to identify for yourself. Am I refuting this identity as a salesperson? And do I need to check that for myself? So I want you to write this down. I'm great at sales. Just own it. Even though the skill sets may not be there just yet, and you probably have some learning to do when it comes to sales. Like I said, learning can be taught, sales can be taught, sales can be learned. And so there's amazing, great resources that are free and super low cost. If you align your identity with a salesperson, guess what? You can make it happen. The second pillar in laying the foundation is your environment. And so we all know this from experience because we've all tried to achieve something in our lives and it was difficult to get started. So I'm going to use Meredith as an example. In this case, she's like, oh no, what is she going to say? Meredith has been on a wellness and fitness journey over the last little bit. And so I haven't talked to her about this, but I bet it took a little bit of changing her environment to get her to go to that new gym. And I would probably put money on it that the first time she walked into that gym, she saw the people in there identifying themselves as fitness people. And the first time she walked in, she may not have identified herself as a fitness person, but she worked some things out in her world to make sure that her child was taken care of. There was maybe like dinner on the table or breakfast on the table so she could scoot out. So she probably had to be really, really conscious of like having her gym clothes ready, having her running shoes like at the door, having gas in the car. All those things are your environment. And so we're changed by the world around us, and we shift our environment based on the context. So a really easy example is like we whisper in church or we whisper in a library because that's the context, that's the environment. We do that because that's what we're told to do. So if we make our environment more obvious to what we want to achieve, chances are we're probably going to do it. So is there not a Tim Hortons or a Starbucks on every corner? And the likelihood that we're going to scoot in there and grab ourselves a coffee? Probably pretty likely because it's right there, because it's easy. And so people want to change their eating habits. What are we always told? Well, make sure you do your meal prep on Sunday because then it's in the fridge and it's in your face. So you have to make it easy. So how does this relate back to sales? I told you I was going to use some real world examples so you could see yourself in this. So with sales, you can absolutely change your environment to accommodate sales into your daily practices. So is it like a sticky note in the middle of your computer screen where you're going to make one sales call today, or you're going to follow up with one prospect that reached out to you online? Okay. So there are certain environmental shifts that you can do in a sales perspective to make this a little easier for you. The third pillar in building the foundation is this thing called temptation bundling. And this is what James Clear brings to the surface for us. And he says, temptation bundling is the practice of pairing an activity you want to do with an activity you don't really want to do, but you need to do. And so he suggests that you identify an activity that you absolutely love and then pair it with something you really struggle to do. So let's say you really struggle with following up with some prospects or following up with leads that were generated for you. And so you want to pick something you absolutely love as the reward. And so we kind of learned this as kids, but then as we grow older, we kind of forget because we think we're too like mature or something. So if you really, really want to go to HomeSense, then you got to do 3 sales calls, right? So you kind of mix the two together. I'll give an example from my life. I really had to get exercising and working out because I hurt my back. And I knew that it was because I was sitting on my butt all day. So in order for me to get a quick workout in and a walk in the morning, I had to pair it with something that I love to do. My guilty pleasure, and I have no shame in sharing this, my guilty pleasure is black coffee in the morning and TikTok. I have no shame in sharing that. That is what I love to do in the morning. But I reward myself with doing that after I've had my walk and after I've done some weights. And so that's how I started to do some temptation bundling. And so this really, really works. It sounds so simple and a little bit like, yeah, okay. But I promise you it does work. And I see Meredith kind of shaking her. So I told you I was going to give you some tangibles, and I told you I was going to give you some tactics. When I shared the example of, going for my morning walk and then rewarding myself with coffee, one of the things I didn't do was say, I'm going to walk 10,000 steps in the morning and do an hour of weights, and then I get my coffee. No, I said I'm going to do a 15-minute walk followed by 15 minutes of weights, and then I'm going to earn my coffee. And what that does is it gets you back into that groove of identifying yourself as somebody that gets up and works out. So it doesn't have to be these huge shifts in your behavior, these huge shifts towards these goals. It just has to be super, super small. If you're uncomfortable with sales, if you're uncomfortable with follow-up, if you're uncomfortable with prospecting, make it simple for yourself. So instead of setting the goal of like 20 sales calls a day, what's the likelihood you're going to do it? Even I wouldn't do that. That's too painful. Maybe it's one a week or one a day. But I would say if you're going to start at one a week, make it really, really small, make it really, really achievable, and then master the habit of showing up. So I would bet that, I'm going to go back to Meredith's example of her fitness journey, but I would bet that getting to that gym the very first time was like, holy crap, like, I can't believe I'm here. What have I signed up for? All these sort of internal narratives going on. This isn't me. I don't know what I'm doing. And then now she had to show up consistently. And now I'm speaking for her, but now I think she identifies as someone who is very into wellness and wants to share that with other people. So that's a really beautiful thing. Same with people who want to like run a marathon. Well, it starts by going to buy a pair of running shoes, as simple as that sounds. Then walk for 10 minutes, then walk for 10,000 steps, run a 5K, finally run a marathon. I doubt very much someone's going out to buy a new pair of running shoes and the next day is running a marathon. Just saying. So it's these gateway habits. So how do you relate this back to sales? So these gateway habits are your ticket to developing great skill sets. Okay. So here are my top sales habits tactics. Number one, automate and utilize technology. And so many people are so scared of technology. Remember that example I shared in a few slides earlier where like, oh, I'm terrible at technology. It's this crappy narrative that I don't know, maybe it's like the 35, 40 plus group. We're kind of feeling left behind with what's happening with technology. But it's almost like the news is telling us that technology is bad, that AI is bad, when in real life, like if you were to utilize some of this technology, it's amazing how it can like up level your game. So I would recommend, if you're really looking to solidify like your sales strategy or learn some sales tactics, learning some sales skills, you don't have a ChatGPT account, get one. Because let me tell you, you're going to sound amazing. Use it as your coach. Use it as your free coach. So lean into some of that technology and whatever processes you can automate for yourself. There are so many tools that if you're a Google user or a Microsoft user, you can start automating some of these things that you do on a daily basis so you can quiet a little bit of the noise and get back to focusing on revenue generating activities. That's my next point. So oftentimes we want to choose the path of least resistance. That's just human nature. We're totally wired that way, by the way. So we really want to focus on the stuff that's like easy. Is anyone familiar with the term like eat the frog? It's this term that people use to say, do the hardest thing first in the morning, because chances are you're going to put it on the back burner, on the back burner, on the back burner, and then it's holding you back from actually achieving it. So if you were to set yourself up for success, maybe focus on one revenue generating activity in the morning. First thing you sit down, instead of checking your email, instead of making a checklist, why don't you go ahead and respond to a lead that came in through some of your lead generating activities that you do online. So focus on those revenue generating activities. Those are the best habits. And by the way, I made this list because I've worked with, at this point in my career, hundreds of salespeople. And so I've seen what separates the good from the bad. And so this is the good. The people that really, really own their sales strategy are the ones that never really let their revenue generating activities take a back seat. They realize that that's the good stuff. I'm going to focus my time and attention there. The other one's a little woo-woo, so just bear with me, but it's really like that results-oriented mindset. The best people that excel at sales are the ones that don't let the negative narrative seep in. I'm not good enough. There's not enough room for me. There's too much competition. I can't sell. I'm terrible at sales. Everyone's doing the same thing that I'm doing. I don't have the right technology. I don't have the right phone. I don't take good pictures. I haven't had a photographer take my pictures. Listen, the list goes on and on. And so are you a scarcity mindset individual, or are you a results-oriented, positive growth mindset individual? Now, there are people that are able to kick themselves out of scarcity mindset and go into abundance mindset. And so I've done a little bit of work here, because I can honestly say about 10 years ago, I was more scarcity. There's lots of things working against me. I'll never find a great job again. I keep finding these jobs that don't work out for me. It must be me. Maybe I need to go back to school, right? It's this negative narrative, this scarcity mindset. But if you can kick yourself out of that and go into a results-oriented mindset, you know, if you're on TikTok, there's lots of people who give actually amazing advice on developing a more abundant mindset. And so if you haven't read the book, like the actual book, The Secret, it's got 2 thumbs up from me. Again, I told you it was a bit woo-woo, but I promise you, these are the sales habits of the best of the best. And my final advice to you, if you want to develop your skills and you want to develop these sales habits, become curious longer with your customers. Sitting in this seat as like a director of sales for an organization, daily, I have companies coming to me that want to pitch their technology, their programs, something that they've developed. There's always something that somebody wants to pitch me. And so if they spark my interest, I say, yeah, absolutely. Let's see if this can make a difference for our business. But one of the things I see the most happening is that they'll ask me 2 questions and then start with the pitch. And they data dump all over me. And I don't really enjoy it. And guess what? Your customers don't either. So they would rather you be curious about their business longer. So set yourself up for your discovery calls with at least 10 really great open-ended questions you really, really want to know about, and then push yourself to be curious longer. So business owners such as yourself, if you're getting pitched to, doesn't it feel great for someone to ask you all about your business and what your goals are? What are you trying to achieve? And all that information is so good if you want to become a great salesperson, because then you can align your business solutions with what their pain points are, right? We kind of hear that language in sales. But the best salespeople are the ones that remain curious for longer. So that's what I'm going to challenge you to do. So I want to open it up for some questions or for some dialogue. So if anyone has sort of just a generic question, I'll pause here and then we can have a little discussion. Does anyone have any specific questions or comments? I have a couple, but it sometimes gets a bit quiet.
I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes I feel like when I'm in a discovery call and I am asking those questions at the beginning, I wonder if the person on the other end is kind of thinking like, okay, quit the small talk, let's talk like numbers and process and that sort of thing. Do you have any insights on that?
Yeah, so I love that you've identified that, because that says to me that you're like really intuitive and you are pretty self-aware, and you're identifying this potentially coming across with people that you're trying to do discovery calls with. So my best advice to you is get in front of it. And so you can start the conversation like, I know that this might feel a little like I'm asking a lot of questions, but I promise you, stay with me. There's a method to my madness. And so if you get in front of it, they'll feel a little bit more like, oh, okay, yeah, I'll go with it, Kate, no problem. So if you can get in front of it and coach them and say, listen, Kate, I'm going to ask you some really, really important questions today. Before we set up this meeting, I said we would take about 45 minutes. Is that still okay? Yeah, that's fine. Okay, great. So like I said, I've got a few questions to ask you today. The reason I do that is because I like to get a really, really thorough understanding of your business so that I can figure out for us as a team, see if we're a really good fit for each other or not, right? So by no means am I going to waste your time. The questions I have to ask you today are really, really important for me to get to know you, get to know your business, your goals, your aspirations. And then if at the end of it, we're a really, really good fit, I'll provide a proposal to you that you can look over. Okay. How does that sound? And so getting in front of it, kind of coaching them along the way as to what the intention is behind the discovery call is probably going to alleviate that uncomfortable feeling. So I hope that helps.
That helps so much. I wish I could just like record you and play that in my calls.
Yeah, in my line of business, actually, okay, so I'm a director of sales for a senior living company, and part of our job is we sometimes tour individuals who are looking to move in, and they're met with a resident who lives in one of our residences that has behaviors. And so I learned this through coaching my team on how to navigate these uncomfortable situations. So yeah, the best thing that works is just identify it. You've done a really great job of identifying kind of the challenge or like the little sticking point, and then get in front of it and coach them along the way. It's the best way to do it. That's a really good question.
Thanks, Nicole. I appreciate your advice on that.
Any other questions? Any other sticky situations you've had with like discovery calls are a big one. People really find that is a skill that takes a lot of practice and and development. Are you guys feeling that as well? Anyone else feeling that? Yeah, Brianna's like, yeah. Brianna, what's kind of been going on with your discovery calls?
Usually, really good. I feel good about my process. But I've had a few where it's either like my people pleasing kind of gets in the way of actually figuring out what I should do for the customer, or it's more like throughout the sales process, no matter what I do to try and over communicate. Sometimes there's customers who just maybe aren't paying enough attention to the details, and that happens. I get that. It's more just like, okay, how do I make sure that they're paying attention to the important stuff so that once I book them, we're set up for success.
So do you feel like sometimes your customers just like aren't getting it? Is that the sense that I'm getting from you, that sometimes they miss details?
I think sometimes they are not seeing the details that are communicated like multiple times, whether it's like over a call, but also in like a follow-up email. And so when we get to actually like following through, even just like the beginning part, just to like sign the contract and stuff, there's a lot of the same questions coming up. And I know I've already answered this. And so it's just like, I just try to like repeat it, but sometimes I wonder if I'm actually sabotaging it by trying to please them too much. I don't know.
Yeah, interesting. So for you could take a look at your process and how you communicate. So if someone is missing details along the way, is there potential for you to sort of simplify how you deliver that content? So I'm not suggesting in any way that you're doing this, but maybe So I'll use this example. We receive so much information in a day. We're inundated with information because we're on our phones, we're on our computer, right? And we're at work, and we're like, there's tons of coming at us a day that we're only really able to capture key information, like small bits at a time. So maybe it's sort of delivering the message in smaller chunks so that they're able to follow you a little bit better on that journey. But it's great that you've identified that it's kind of a gap, because then you can start to make tweaks along the way, because people will always show you where the gaps are. So for example, if I've communicated something to someone on my team and they're just not getting it, I go, okay, how did I communicate this? So I come back to me instead of like, I don't understand. Why are they not understanding this? So I say, okay, how did I communicate it? And what way did I communicate it and when, right? So you can do a little bit of work on that end, but it's great that you've identified it.
That's great. Thank you for the advice. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, you're welcome.
I have a question, Nicole.
Mm-hmm.
So there's lots of what do you call it, like quotes and kind of memes on Instagram that float around with polar opposite thinking, and it's around the amount of ghosting that happens after a discovery call. So at that stage where you know somebody has a problem that needs solving, you know, it's usually fairly obvious whether you're a fit or not in the discovery call. So, but where I'm going with this is there's this belief that it's the business owner's fault because you didn't communicate the value enough, that you shouldn't even expect a response, which is pretty bold thinking. And I'm not saying it's one or the other. It's probably definitely somewhere in the middle. But, and then there's this thing of, no, people are just rude and aren't getting back to you, whether it's a yes or no, or even afraid of just saying no, right? Maybe there's not really a question here, but I'm curious on like where your thoughts are around that. I know I have like a community of business owners. I mean, even everyone on my team in their own right is a business owner, and there's been so much ghosting. So I'm sure there's something going on in the sales process there that maybe you could advise on, but also what are your thoughts on, hey, it should always be the responsibility of the business owner. They clearly did not communicate the value, or it's just sort of expected to be here and there.
Yeah, so I've got a few thoughts on that actually. So sometimes with ghosting, it's a matter of there's a lot that goes behind it. So it's maybe like, I don't want to hurt their feelings. I don't want to admit that I can't afford it. Maybe I'm just too ahead of myself and I can't really go down this path right now. I've got too much on the go. So there's a lot of psychology behind ghosting, right? And it would take too long to go into figuring everybody out, right? So the one piece of advice I could give is during your discovery call, giving them permission from the start to say, if this isn't for you, that's totally okay. We will still be friends. But the best thing we can do is to see if there's alignment there with one another, Meredith. And then if at the end of this, you're like, it's not my jam, it's not the right time, it's not the right fit, it's all good. Like I said, we'll still be friends. And maybe we can take a look at this in like a year from now if it's not for you. How does that sound? So if you get agreement from the get-go that if it's not for them, I'm not going to be sad. I'm not going to be upset. It's okay. So you can kind of take a little bit of the shame off of them. And if you've tried that and it's not been successful, the other thing I can share is potentially try to build in more time for connection with your prospects. And so it sounds a little bit soft, but if you're able to get some time on your discovery call to like learn about your person. So the person behind the business is a mom, is a wife, is maybe working 2 jobs, is living somewhere cool, right? So get to know them on like a deeper connection. That way saying no to you feels really, really shitty. And so they're probably maybe a little bit more likely to just be honest and be themselves. The other thing is that ghosting has become super easy. So again, people are wired to take the path of least resistance, and I don't have to get back to her. I don't know her anything, and away I go. So not taking offense to the ghosting as well is super important. I don't always align myself with, you didn't explain the value big and like that the best way you could. I'm sure you guys are doing amazing at expressing the value of what you offer. But if you have a growth mindset, know that if somebody says no to you, there's always somebody else. Mm-hmm. So not really taking offense and kind of doing your best to follow up, and hey, it's on them. The other thing I can say about ghosting is just because they've ghosted you today does not mean that a year from now they're not going to circle back, because you never know what's happening in someone's life. And Brianna is shaking her head. So clearly she had this happen to her. People have stuff that comes up in their life. Maybe they've just had a family member that got ill. Maybe for me, my dog got skunked on Sunday. So if anyone reached out to me on Sunday, there was no way they were getting a response, right? So people got a lot of stuff going on. So bringing a little bit of humility back to it, a bit of empathy for people, that I think can lessen the blow of getting ghosted.
I think too, what I hear that I could apply as well is like almost giving that permission in my follow-up emails, because that's obviously from there, right? Like where it happens.
Yes.
So, hey, if you're not feeling like this is a fit for whatever reason, that is okay.
Yeah. That is a great point. For you guys, what we've implemented in our business is when we do lead generation, we have 2 categories of people. We have marketing qualified leads and sales qualified leads. And likely you guys are doing something similar, maybe different language. A marketing qualified lead is somebody who dipped their toe into your offering. So they downloaded a brochure, they filled out a form, they're not ready to talk to you, they don't want to go there yet, but they're dipping their toe. Sales qualified lead is someone who's booked a discovery call with you. And so if you can start to really define where people are at in their journey with you, that will help you focus on the opportunities that are more likely to close. So if someone's booking a discovery call with you, that's a sales qualified lead. Follow up. The chances of them buying from you, probably pretty good. The marketing qualified leads, they need a little bit more love. They need maybe to go into one of your workflows where they get a series of emails. And the emails should be generated to them to take the next step. So book a call with me, book a discovery call with me, right? So giving them little bits of information to warm them up to you, but ultimately you want them to book a call. So maybe that helps you sort of identify where people are at in their decision-making journey as well.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. I just love conversations about sales. Such a sales geek. It's really the psychology behind it. So if you do a little bit of digging online, you can find out the psychology of people and their decision-making. And a lot of people's decision-making around sales has to do with change. So if they're taking a step with you, identifying that, like I'll use Meredith because I understand her business a little bit more, but if they're going to Meredith for, let's say, a website, likely they're making a life change because they're going maybe from corporate to independent, or they're making a change from a current vendor to a new vendor. So it's that psychology of change. So if you want to become a really, really good salesperson, doing some reading and some YouTubing on people's journey through change. It sounds a little bit strange that, well, they're only picking to choose a website, like big deal. It is a huge deal. It's a whole brand change. And now I have to partner with a new vendor, or I'm making this huge life switch. So there's a lot of psychology and there's a lot of emotion behind change. So the work that you're doing in sales is a little bit of like, there's psychology rooted in there. If you can tap into that, your likelihood of closing more sales is pretty high. Your job as a business owner, as a consultant, is to consult on the change that they're about to make. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Does anybody else have any questions for Nicole? That might be it.
Cool.
Thank you.
Thank you. This is a really great conversation. And I'm going to do, if you hang on with me for like one quick second, I'm going to do a draw. I told Meredith I would do a draw for this book. But if the person that wins has already read this book, don't worry, I've got tons. I can find you a book. We can do a whole discovery call around what book you need. So I'm just going to write the names down. So I've got Kate, Jennifer, Stephanie, Christine, and Brianna. So I'm just going to tear these little guys up. This is totally like old school, names in a hat. I have my little Wheel of Fortune. If you've ever seen the Wheel of Fortune online, where you put people's names in a wheel and you spin it. There's a little bit of setup. I like this because this is more old school. So Brianna, what is it that you sell? What's your business?
Oh, my business. I'm copywriting and content writing.
Oh, amazing.
Yeah. And yeah, I did have a client go to me like last summer and then come back in like March and all of a sudden be like, I'm just ready to go. I'm like, oh, okay.
Yeah. You said the key word, ready. The psychology of change is navigating people through their stages of readiness. So if someone is not ready and they could be like what's called in denial, maybe they're in denial. I don't need this. I don't need you. I don't need this change, right? They're maybe just not there. So the stages of readiness go denial, thinking, planning, and then action. So if you can think about when you meet people in your discovery calls, if you can figure out what stage of readiness they're in, you can start to populate them into maybe a CRM or another, piece of technology that you use to identify what stage of readiness they're at. And then your job as a business owner, as a salesperson, is to help them get ready for change. Stay on top of them, figure out what's going on in their business and their world. So I've got these pieces of paper. Share them around. Okay, I'm going to pick one. It's Brianna. Brianna. So,
Thank you.
Brianna, did you read Atomic Habits?
No, it's on my to-read list though, so that's perfect.
Okay, great. So I'll have Meredith send me your mailing address, and then what I'll do is I order it through Amazon, and it'll have to be directly mailed to your home address.
Okay, amazing. Thank you.
Yeah, you'll really love it, I'm sure.
Yeah, it's so good.
Thanks so much.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, guys.
It's a book that I think is on like everybody's must read list, whether you have a goal of sales or not. Like it's a habits book. So you'll love it. Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Nicole. As always, you've crushed this. I have lots of notes, and I'm actually, despite the fact that I think I have the flu right now, there's things that I'm like, oh my gosh, I want to update right now. I'm gonna take care of myself first, though. So
Yeah, for
all right.
sure.
Thanks for joining, everyone. I'll be
Thank
sending out
you.
the replay a little bit later. Okay. Okay.
Awesome.
Bye.
Bye.